Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy here, also known as ETCG1 on this here channel. Hey, if it's your birthday, happy birthday! So for today's topic, let's talk about Top Gear, UK Top Gear to be specific, and the fact that it appears to be no longer and may never be again. As of the taping of this video, it's been about a week since Jeremy was suspended from Top Gear, and also production of Top Gear UK was suspended. The reason, for those of you not familiar, was apparently Jeremy Clarkson and one of the producers had gotten into a physical altercation. This is all alleged, but apparently it was over the fact that after a day of shooting, Jeremy had gotten back to the hotel and the kitchen was closed, and therefore there was no hot meal available. Witness reports of a family that was staying in the hotel that said that there was a heated, expletive-laden tirade that Jeremy went on towards the producer, which eventually ended in him striking him. This is all, once again, alleged. In fact, I believe it was Jeremy that actually called it in and reported it, perhaps to tell his side of the story to start with. I've been doing a lot of reading on this. Obviously, it's a topic that interests me very much. I absolutely love the show. So much so that it wasn't that long ago that I cut the cord. I gave up cable television and satellite television and got myself a digital antenna and started bringing things in that way, which obviously left me without Top Gear. Well, I didn't want to be without Top Gear, so I got it on iTunes. And it was just the other day that iTunes refunded me the money for the other 3 episodes that I'd already paid for. So that to me says that the writing is on the wall. iTunes has already called it. So we may have seen the end of the season and the end of Top Gear UK as we know it. And that is a very sad day indeed, because I have had many years of enjoyment from Top Gear. I think I started watching in earnest sometime around 2006 is when I discovered it. I've done a previous video on Top Gear UK versus American Top Gear, and many of you pointed out some of my mistakes and my misconceptions of the show as far as when it actually began, which I believe was in 1977. Jeremy Clarkson came in 1988 along with James May, and shortly after that is when Richard Hammond came in, which we have the trifecta that we have today. And the reason they had brought Jeremy in, I read, was because they wanted to give the show a little more of an edge. And Jeremy was, I think, a writer at the time. He had also hosted some other programs. He was fairly early on in his career, but he was good at doing talk shows. In fact, he did some talk shows aside from Top Gear, but obviously he had a love for cars and going fast and doing all those wonderful things. So Top Gear was a perfect venue for him to develop, if you will. And I think he's great as a character. He really stands out. I think he really makes the show. I think all 3 of them make the show. I think it's the chemistry between the 3 of them. And obviously Jeremy being the alpha dog, not only is he the tallest, but he's certainly the loudest and certainly the bossiest. But, you know, likes to present himself as somewhat inept mechanically sometimes, that type of thing, and doesn't like motorcycles, blah, blah, blah. But he's a great character. Unfortunately, that great character comes from a man. Well, I don't want to say unfortunately, but he's a person just like you and me. And I can tell you that if I haven't eaten all day and I'm hungry, I might feel like I want to punch somebody too. I mean, those Snickers commercials are a perfect example of what people turn into when they don't get the right food and they're hungry. Not saying that I'm trying to excuse his behavior should that have been the case, but let's face it, the BBC had warned him several times beforehand, stating that if there was one more incident, that's it, he was gone. So the BBC is in a very tough position if you think about it. And I know about the petition that's out there to get him back on the show. It's funny because the day it happened, I started reading all these articles on the internet about it, and all of them mentioned the petition to get Jeremy back on the show. And every time I would read a different article, it started out at 300,000 and had signed it. The next article I read it was like 400,000. And this is just going down the list. And the next one would be 500,000, and then after that, now it's up over 1 million. Here it is, like I say, a week after the fact. Everybody wants him back. Everybody wants the show back. We all love the show. But I'm here to tell you, it's not very likely it's going to happen. Several reasons for that. First of all, as I was saying, the BBC is in a very difficult position. You can't be in a position of authority and tell somebody that if they do something again, that they're not going to be allowed back. They're out, they're gone. You can't do that and then bring them back, no matter how much money you're making. And let's face it, Top Gear is probably the BBC's biggest show, period, ever, in the history of the BBC. It's broadcast in over 200 countries. It's beloved throughout the world, with the exception of Argentina. And I don't blame them for that. I'm not going to get into that whole thing right now, but that also has contributed to Jeremy's position now, I believe. And like I said, the BBC is in a really tough position because, yes, it's a top-grossing show and everything, but they cannot afford to just let it slide. They cannot afford to have him come back if indeed it turns out to be true that there was an altercation, it was physical, and Jeremy was responsible for it. Because that is unacceptable behavior in any organization. Yes, it's a sad thing. I would love to see him back, but I'm telling you now, I wouldn't count on it. However, he's had offers from elsewhere. I think the Sky Network, whatever, was chomping at the bit trying to get him to come in. Jeremy Clarkson is not Paula Deen. Let's just put it that way. So he's not going to have to hang his head in shame and go away. If anything, he will be championed. He will be, he will definitely be okay. James and Richard, on the other hand, I'm not saying they won't be okay, but here's what I'm thinking. Okay, so say, for instance, purely hypothetical here, they give Jeremy the boot. So what's next? Do they bring somebody else in to replace him? I read several articles on the possibilities of people that they could use to replace Jeremy. I think a lot of people would agree with me in saying that there is no replacement for Jeremy Clarkson. Because if you take him out of the equation and you leave Richard and James still in the show, it's not the same show, it's a completely different show. That would be a very tough sell. Because right at the onset, that other person would be hated and loathed right out of the box. By a lot of people would see him as someone who took Jeremy's job, and they wouldn't like it. And I'm sure that there would be a lot of pushback from that. I'm certain of it, in fact. Not to say that it couldn't be done, but also think about the position of Richard and James. I believe, and I don't know them, but based on what I've seen in the show, all three of them work extremely well together, and it can at least be inferred that they appear to be all good friends. In fact, looking at James May's response when the reporters knocked on his door and was asking about the entire incident, I think James handled it beautifully, absolutely beautifully. He pretty much wrote the whole thing off as far as what he saw by saying that he was blind drunk. Brilliant. And also saying that, I'm paraphrasing here, but something to the effect of, Jeremy Clarkson is a knob, but I quite like him very much. And I think that says a lot about their relationship, and that, yeah, he does some stupid things, but I love him anyway. That's what I took away from that. And that to me sounds like something a friend would say. It doesn't sound to me like somebody who's throwing him under the bus. It sounds to me like somebody who's sticking by him. And this gets me back to the point of, okay, without Jeremy, is there a Top Gear UK? There's certainly not a Top Gear UK as we know it, but what is there? What does that leave us with? It's a big empty hole, honestly, and it's going to be very difficult to fill. But as I said earlier, the BBC's got a lot invested in Top Gear, and to just walk away from the whole thing, that would be difficult. So, would Richard and James stick around? And would they be with a new presenter? And this is what I'll put out to you in that. And this is what I'll also put out to you is possibly the reason why it's all come to this. This may just be the nail in the coffin, but to me, the writing has been on the wall for some time. The show's been on with Jeremy in its current incarnation for about 22 years now. And that's an awfully long time to do a show, a very, very long time to do a show. I've been doing my show, Eric the Car Guy, for 6 years, and it gets tough. It gets tough to find new material. It gets tough to make sure that things are fresh. And I can't imagine, with all the eyes that are on Top Gear UK, of their ability to come up with new and interesting ways to present the show, to keep you coming back, to keep you watching, to keep saying, you know what, Top Gear UK is the best automotive program ever in the entire world, universe, period, bar none. Here's my point. You've got three guys, middle-aged, Jeremy being in his mid-50s, and the other two, I don't know their exact age, but I know they're pretty close. They're out in the jungle. They're in the Arctic. They're in all these places of extreme weather, extreme situations, having to do these things that are very entertaining for us on television, but to actually live through some of these things. James got thrown off a horse, and another time he also got hurt. He's gotten hurt a couple of times. He's gotten physically injured in the course of filming because they're just goofing around doing stupid things. And that's what we love about the show, but at the same time, I'm getting older myself. And I can say the older you get, the less inclined you are to goof around like that. I'm sure if you're doing it for television, you're doing it for a living, hey, go for it. But how long can you sustain that? How long can you sustain something of that nature? Only so long. And as I was saying, last year's season of Top Gear, at least for me here in the US, was a whole lot of rehashing of previous episodes and previous seasons, and just best of moments, all those kinds of things. And it honestly didn't appeal to me, because I would watch the show over and over. I would watch it again and again and again, the same show, like maybe 2-3 times. So them showing me all that same footage again, I'm like, yeah, I saw that, I know that, yeah, I laughed at it, a couple of times already, I'm done. This may be an opportunity for all of them to say, okay, let's hang it up, maybe do something else. Maybe not do anything at all, maybe retire. I think with their popularity and where they are, they could go around, do an occasional speaking engagement, occasional autograph signing, book signing, write a book, those types of things, and do quite well for the rest of their lives and not have to worry about being on television or doing any of that stuff ever again. Just living off the residuals alone. And being in that position, that would be a very attractive thing. Now, it would be very difficult to walk away from your fans. Very difficult, because let's face it, we all know and love them, and we'd love to keep them around forever and ever, but that's just not how things work. Everything has a beginning and an end. And I fear that this may very well be the end of Top Gear UK. Certainly the end of Top Gear UK as we know it. I don't see Jeremy coming back. I don't see the BBC allowing him to come back. Based on everything that's been said and speculated, I can't wrap my mind around a logical explanation for anything that could have happened. And once again, I don't condone that behavior, but at the same time, like I said, you can't go around doing that kind of thing and expect to get away with it for so long. And I think Jeremy's mature enough to see that, and we'll do what he does. And he's not going away. None of them are going away, but the show Top Gear UK, I think that has gone away. But I've talked, I've got this off my chest. I've been thinking about it, I've been following it. Really sad to see it go. Like I say, it was really great watching the stuff on iTunes, not having to worry about commercials. That was way cool, and was just starting to get into the swing of things, and here we are. Anyway, what's your opinion on Top Gear UK, and more specifically, the latest instance with Jeremy Clarkson? Do you think the show will carry on? Do you think they'll bring him back? Despite the fact that there are more than 1 million people who want him to come back, despite the fact that it makes the BBC tons and tons and gobs of money. We'll see. Time will tell. Only the powers that be know the answers to that. So, Jeremy, if you see this, I wish you all the best. You have given me hours, days of entertainment. I can't thank you enough for what you've done. I really can't. And if you go forward, I wish you all the best. But if you decide to hang it up, I completely understand. Anyway, if you have automotive questions, I'd ask you to head over to ericthecarguy.com. Yes, ericthecarguy.com. Link down there in the description. If you wish to connect with me socially, I can be found on Google+, Facebook, Twitter, and now Instagram. And I close each of my videos with be safe, have fun, stay dirty, and I will see you next time. Top Gear UK for the win.